welcome to this webinar. And this is kind of a new webinar in a series of webinars that we started in 2023 about generative AI. And so today the title of the webinar is called GenAI Painkillers. And so what I will do is to discuss a kind of number of pain points that a lot of people face when using GenAI. So I will present a number of pain points that have been identified and will also explain how I try to deal with these pain points. And of course, that's simply my opinion and my experience. So I hope that's clear. So then I think with no further ado, I can start. So as mentioned, when you registered for this webinar, you could highlight some pain points. And in the end, I have kind of identified the three most important ones. And the first one that was mentioned a lot was that a lot of people still feel kind of uncomfortable with the risk of what we call hallucination. So that GenAI systems can make up stuff. And so the question is, how can you effectively deal with that risk? Another topic that often was mentioned in the comments was, how can I generate good slides with GenAI? A lot of people seem to still struggle with that. So I want to show you some approaches that nowadays work actually quite well. And kind of spoiler alert, we will not use PowerPoint because their Copilot is still very bad. So we will use other tools than PowerPoint. And there were also quite some questions more about the management and implementation part of generative AI within companies. So the question was a bit like, how can we create for our employees a good environment that can stimulate our employees to engage with GenAI in a safe and reliable manner? So also there, I want to show you a bit my learnings, also at WHU. Actually, in the past years at WHU, we also really worked on this topic with an AI task force. So I can also show you a bit my learnings from that approach. So that's what I want to discuss with you this evening. And then we have time for questions and answers and comments. Yes, so let me first go to the topic of hallucination. So very briefly, when you use GenAI, what do you actually want? You want to have a perfect intern. So somebody to who you can outsource a lot of boring work and that can do it in a very reliable way. And most the optimal case is that at the end, your intern can present a fantastic Excel sheet with all the summaries that you want. That's all what we want from GenAI. Unfortunately, our intern tends to often end up like this, making a lot of mistakes, creates errors, is not reliable, and that creates a lot of frustration. And that's what we mean when we talk about hallucination. So still today, although it has improved already a lot, but still today, there is quite a significant risk that when you do a prompt in ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude, that it gives you an answer that at first sight looks very plausible, but it's factually incorrect. And that's what we call hallucination. So it's answers that at first sight seem to make a lot of sense, but actually factually they are not correct. And of course, that can create a lot of reputational damage. There are already famous use cases of consulting agencies like Deloitte having to retract the reports because they used hallucinated information. Now, why does hallucination happen? Very briefly, I will not go now too technical, but why does hallucination happen? A first reason is because large language models, although they have a lot of knowledge, so they scrape like the whole internet, they still have gaps in their knowledge. So they don't know everything. Sometimes they might not be able to access certain information on the internet. And when they lack information, they try to fill up these gaps by predicting the next word in a sentence. And in that way, you can often get fabricated answers that might, from a kind of language perspective, sound plausible, but are factually incorrect. And so we always need to take into account that these systems fundamentally are systems that predict the next word in a sentence. That's how they're trained. And they are trained to, as good as possible, predict the next word in a sentence. They are not trained to give the most accurate answer. And that can definitely create hallucination. And finally, and I think that's actually the most important problem today in terms of hallucination, finally, we need to realize that these systems are rewarded to give you an answer. So if you ask a prompt and ChatGPT or whatever you use collects information, but is maybe not really sure, it will still give you an answer because these systems get rewarded for answering. Whereas simply saying, I don't know, or I cannot help you is something that is actually punished. Yeah, so they try to be helpful assistants, but because companies like OpenAI, Gemini push them so much to be helpful assistants, they tend to also hallucinate. And that again might jeopardize the accuracy of the output that we receive. So this explains a bit why we face hallucination. Now, how can we deal with hallucination? And there are actually a number of prompting strategies that we can use. First of all, it's very important every time when you prompt to give very clear instructions. Yeah, so here you see an example of a bad prompt. Yeah? So you can ask, what is the exact population of Berlin as of today? If you give better instructions, the risk of hallucination will already be lower. Yeah, so in the right-hand side, you see that I explicitly would argue only answer if you know for sure and cite a source. Yeah, so by adding these instructions, I can already reduce the risk that as a helpful assistant, it will just make up information. Yeah, so by adding instructions, what we also call guardrails to our prompts, we can already reduce the risk of hallucination. A second thing is that it always makes sense to give as much context as possible. So if you have information that is relevant for answering the prompt, always give that information. Yeah, so here, if you would have, if you want to ask, give me a summary of our Q4 performance, yeah, then try to give as much information about that so that the likelihood that it will start making up data is reduced. Yeah, so that's what we call context engineering. The more context you give, the better the output, the lower the risk of hallucination. Third strategy is add to your prompt examples of output that you want and add what we call chain of thought reasoning. Yeah, so examples means that you give examples of answers that it could give. And again, if in your examples, if you give examples of answers that it should not answer, if it should say, yeah, I don't know, then it realizes, okay, I'm allowed to say I don't know. And that will reduce the risk of hallucination. And chain of thought logic means that you clearly explain step by step what it needs to do. And in this step-by-step approach, you can again emphasize only answer if you know the actual result. Yeah? And finally, again, be as specific as possible in your prompting. Yeah? So if you just say, discuss recent trends in our industry, that's very vague, that's not specific. So try to be as specific as possible. Yeah? So how many trends? What is your industry? What is the time frame? If you give that information, again, the risk of hallucination will become much smaller. Yeah, so these are a number of straightforward prompts. And of course, finally, what you also can do is in the prompt, ask ChatGPT or whatever you use to do a self-audit, so that it critically reflects on its response. You can ask it to verify sources. And of course, finally, it always makes sense to have a human in the loop to do a final check. But that's then the final step that you all still need to do. But in terms of prompting, asking it to do self-auditing and check sources will further help to minimize hallucination. So these are all kinds of strategies that you can use. Now, of course, we are all a bit lazy. If you, for every single prompt, have to give all that information, make all these specifications, that's very time consuming. And that one might actually reduce a bit the efficiency of using ChatGPT. However, today, there are a lot of tools that can help you to automate this. And for instance, I recently created a GPT. And so in OpenAI, you can create these specialized GPTs. And this is a GPT called the Hallucination Minimizer. And so this is a GPT that I created where you can enter a prompt, and then this GPT will analyze the risk of hallucination regarding your prompt. And based on that analysis, it will create a better prompt that minimizes the risk of hallucination. Yeah. And so let me demonstrate this a bit. So I will go now to my GPT. So let me briefly show you what I actually built here in the backend. So this is a GPT in OpenAI. And so I can show you the backend. So what I actually did here was to upload a report about what are the highest risks of hallucination and how can you deal with them. And actually that report I created with deep research in OpenAI. So OpenAI has this deep research functionality to create extensive report. So I asked it to create a deep research report about hallucinations and how to deal with it. I uploaded this PDF in my GPT. And then I set as instructions, when the user gives a prompt, you need to analyze the risk of hallucination. And then you need to optimize the prompt to minimize the risk of hallucination as much as possible. And so let me show you now with an example how we can do that or how it will work. So what you see here, let me go up. So what I asked here is produce a market analysis on the commercial potential of generative AI in education. So that would be normally my prompt. So I will now copy paste that prompt and go to my Hallucination Minimizer. Let me briefly go back here to my full screen. So I will put this prompt, and this is actually a bad prompt. So this is a prompt where I do not provide a lot of information. So that's another good prompt. Here the risk of hallucination is quite high. I'm not specific. I don't give context. I don't give step by step. I do nothing. But so now when I press enter here, the Hallucination Minimizer will not answer the prompt, but it will simply create a much better prompt to reduce the risk of hallucination. So now it will say, look, below is an hallucination minimized version of your prompt. So now I receive actually an optimized prompt, and you see what it does now. It makes it more specific. It creates guardrails. So it's saying these are hard rules that you need to follow, and no invented facts, citations required. If unsure, say no. So it creates now a lot of guardrails. So this is now a much more sophisticated prompt that will substantially reduce the risk of hallucination. And so now I can simply copy paste this prompt. And you see it's quite a long prompt. It has even further optimized it. So let me go to the, I will take that one here again, sorry. So let me take that prompt here. I go to a new chat, and now I can simply paste my prompt and execute the prompt. Now, I would suspect that this will take some time because this is actually quite a long prompt. So now it will enable what is called a reasoning model, and that will take a bit more time. Although now it seems to be already created something. So now we see here a market analysis, and you see that now for every paragraph, there is now a link to the citation. Here, I can already be quite sure that hallucination will be drastically minimized. Can I be 100% sure? No. So also still here, there is the risk of hallucination. So I'm not 100% sure, but in my experience, I've now drastically reduced that risk of hallucination. So this is a way that can help you to do it. So more sophisticated prompting and using tools like this Hallucination Minimizer can really help you to further reduce the risk that you face inaccurate results when using ChatGPT. So that was the first thing that I briefly wanted to highlight. Now, the second point that was mentioned a lot in the feedback was actually the issue of generating slides with generative AI. And a lot of people here, I suppose, need to generate slides on a regular basis. Also, I need to do that on a regular basis. And indeed, for a long time, AI was not a very good slide generator, but I would say in the past months, that has been changing quite drastically. So today we already have several solutions that allow you to really leverage slide generation with generative AI. And I will show you 3 options because I think every option has advantages and disadvantages. So the first option, and again, what did I do? So I created this report to minimize hallucination. So that I already showed you. I did a deep research to create a report to minimize hallucination. And now I want to use that report, that deep research report, as the starting point for a presentation on how to minimize hallucination. So imagine I now need to give a full presentation on how to minimize hallucination. And I want to use as starting point the deep research report that I generated. So how can I now create slides from that report? That's what I want to do. And the first tool that we can use is GammaApp. And now I need to go again to my slides here. So now I can go to my GammaApp. So this is, and you actually have a free version for this. So you don't have to immediately start paying. I now have a subscription because I use it quite regularly in workshops, but you have quite some credits in the free version. So you simply have to create a login and then you can use it. So now what will I do? I will create slides. And so now I will go here for import file. So I will import my file, and that's this deep research report that I want to import. Not an URL, sorry, upload a file. And so now I will have to upload my deep research report. So now I have to go to the right file here. And that's, let me double check. Yes, here, deep research report. And so now it's uploading the file. So now it's uploading the PDF. And this is not a very big file, so it will not take a lot of time. And then we can use it as a starting point to create slides. And then we will simply have to add some additional information, and then it will start creating slides for us. Yeah, so now it has uploaded the file. I can indicate, yes, I want to have a presentation. I can now press on continue. And then it will ask some final question. How concise should the text be? I can further stipulate the language. I can stipulate the visuals, and you can even here upload your own templates. Now, it will not perfectly imitate your template, but it will get quite close. Yeah? So it will not perfectly follow your branded template that you have of your own company, but it will be quite close. So this is kind of the imitation of the WHU template, actually. And now I can press generate. Yeah? So I just uploaded the file, and I say generate, and now it will actually start generating for me slides. So now we can see it starts generating slides for me with GammaApp. And you can see these are not shitty slides. Actually, the layout already looks quite nice. And it will actually also create with AI visuals to accompany my slide. I can already go now to the present mode so that we can see what it is building. And you see here on the right-hand slide, it's still working on the animation for my title slides, but we can go to the next page, for instance. So here, what are hallucinations? Why do large language models hallucinate? So you see, I already get a very nice slide overview by actually one single click here. And this always makes consultants a bit nervous if they see that, because suddenly a lot of billing hours might disappear here. So that might be the downside of this tool. But you see also here on the right-hand side, you can see that it makes quite sophisticated visuals. Yeah? So in that way, it's actually a very nice tool to use. And then you can also kind of share them. So that means you can now export them to PowerPoint, and then you can continue to work on them. Although I have to say then working on them in PowerPoint is a bit difficult. So it's better to work on them in GammaApp. Yeah? But so here then, of course, and now my slides are ready, and now I can further optimize my slides by prompting and making changes myself. So then you can edit them as you want to further optimize them. So this is actually a very nice tool to make slides, and much better than, for instance, the Copilot in PowerPoint, which is still, even today, quite low quality, I would say. So this is the first option that we have. Yeah. Oh, let me go back briefly to the right slides. So that's the first option. That's GammaApp. And so briefly, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this tool? So this is actually a very fast tool. So it can create slides very fast. It's very convenient. Yeah, with like 2-3 clicks, you can create slides, and you can imitate your branding style. It will not be perfect, but it will be close. Yeah. The disadvantage is, of course, this is an additional tool where you have to pay an additional subscription. Yeah, so that's, of course, not optimal. As I mentioned, later on, adjusting slides in PowerPoint is a bit tricky. So that's not working that well. My experience is it's a very good tool if you want to start building slides from scratch. It's much more difficult if you have already a slide deck and you want to bring it then into GammaApp, then it becomes much more difficult, to be honest. So it's mainly something if you want to start from scratch based on a document, based on text, and then you want to build slides, that works very well. So this is the first option. Another option that I want to show you, and this is actually a bit more complex, but this is from Claude. Yeah? And Claude is from Anthropic. Yeah? Anthropic is one of these big providers of large language models. And Claude has an option. You need to have the subscription for this, but in Claude, you can do what is called building skills. And that means you can actually, by means of prompting, learn Claude's specific skills. And so what did I do here in Claude? And I will maybe go to Claude so that you can see it a bit more in the actual system, not just on the slides. So let me do that. So I go now to Claude. Let me just go to the starting page to make it clear. Yes. And so in Claude, you can build skills. Now, in order to do so, you first need to go to your settings. So I go now to my settings. You have to go to capabilities. And in your capabilities, you have to make sure that here are skills, and then you have to go to example skills. And here you have to make sure that the skill creator is enabled. Yeah? And this is actually a skill that will allow you to create skills. Yeah? It's a bit meta, I know, but so here it's a skill that will allow you to create skills. So if I have this enabled, I can now, and I will now show you the prompt that I have used already. So I will now briefly go to the prompt that I already have to build skills. So I have built already quite some skills. And let me show you one example. I briefly need to go now to the slide here. So the skill that I've built, and how do you do that? It's simply by prompting. Yeah? So I write a prompt saying, create a new skill that is able to add the WAU brand style to artifacts, documents, and presentations. In order to do so, scan the attached document to create a library of logos, layouts, font styles that align with the WAU branding. This skill should be able to add particular features to a document to make aligned with the overall WAU branding. And that's my prompt. And the only thing that I provide as an attachment is an example of my slides. Yeah? So I upload an example of my slides, and then I ask it to create for me a skill. And let me now briefly show you how that looks like. So now I will show you how I built the skill. And so I wrote this prompt, I uploaded as an attachment to PowerPoint, and then Claude will actually start creating a skill. Yeah, so here it starts creating a skill. And in the end, a skill is simply a very extensive description on how to make a WAU brand style PowerPoint. It's actually a markdown file, a kind of text file, to create a PowerPoint slide. And then we need to go down, down, down. Let me see, where is it? Up. You see quite some information here. Yeah, and actually I think maybe I missed it now. But then in the end, it will create a skill for you that you can then copy into your skills. That's it. So it will create for you a file, and that file you can copy into your skills. And maybe just to give you another example here, I also built other skills. So I can show you one more. So let me do that. So here, for instance, I built a skill to create data-driven hypotheses. And then so you can then simply download this skill and upload it into your capabilities, and then you can start using that skill. So you have to create a skill, and then you simply open a new chat, and then you simply say, look, here is the attachment. This is again the hallucination attachment. And then you can say, look, use from this attachment, build now a PowerPoint presentation using the skill that I have created. And then it will create for you a PowerPoint in that skill. So let me show you the output here. So I have to go to another link. Yes. So now I will go show you what it did. Emerges now. Okay. Yeah. So I have my skill. Yeah. So I uploaded now the PDF about this hallucination. I said, create for me a presentation. And then it starts again working on it. It does some coding. And then in the end, it creates for me a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. So that's what it in the end here is doing. I can now immediately see it here, and that's because I actually now saved it as a project, I suppose. But then it actually creates quite a good PowerPoint presentation for me. And actually the slides that we saw before, so let me show you that here. These slides were created with Claude skills. And so they are a bit more professional, down to earth slides, but in that way you can really customize them to your specific preferences using these skills. And so this is a bit more technical, initially maybe a bit more complex, but if you want to have really customized slides based on your preferences, this is at the moment the best approach to do. Yeah? So that's also kind of what are the advantages and disadvantages of this approach. Yeah? So this is really about if you want to create customized slides following a specific branding style. And these slides actually can be very easily adjusted later on in PowerPoint. So this is a slide that was created and that I can now really adjust in PowerPoint. So it fits well into existing PowerPoint workflows. So if you want to adjust slides also, it works very well. The disadvantages are that it's a bit more technical and you need, of course, a Claude subscription. It takes longer. So this typically easily takes 5 to 10 minutes to create slides. And an important limitation here is that it is not yet good in creating visuals. So that's a limitation. So this is more if you have to make boring academic slides, which I have to do a lot. So for me, it's a relevant tool. Then actually Claude Skills can be a good tool. Finally, and this is maybe the most spectacular tool I would say nowadays, and that's NotebookLM. So today, also in NotebookLM, which is a Google product, you can create slides. So let me show you how that works. And you will see I have already a notebook, which is called the hallucination presentation. So what did I do here? And you see here on the left-hand side, I uploaded again my deep research report. Yeah? So that I simply uploaded in my notebook. So that's again the same PDF. And here now you can see on the right-hand side, you can do a lot of things with this PDF. And one option is to create a slide deck. Yeah? So here we can create slide decks. And I have actually now created two different versions. So let me show you the prompt that I used to create a first slide deck here. Let me see if I can easily see the prompts. Yeah, view custom prompts. And so here I said, okay, I want an educational presentation that highlights the following aspects. What is hallucination? Why does hallucination happen? And best strategies to reduce hallucination. The target audience are business professionals. Make sure to add cinematic illustrations to visualize the content as much as possible. And so here I want to have a very visual presentation. And now let me show you. That's what you can create. So let me show you now the outputs. So I can start the presentation. And so this is a slide presentation that NotebookLM created for me based on this prompt. And I hope you see that here the visualizations are really very good. And this is actually created with the newest, what is called Nano Banana Pro image generator. So that's fully integrated in this LLM notebook slide generator. And here you can see, to be honest, here we have reached super intelligence for slide generation. I would never be able to make this kind of slides. Yeah? Or I think a designer, if you see this kind of images, I don't think a lot of people here in the room would be able to make this themselves. Yeah? So here, the type of slides that you can create are extremely visible, of extremely high quality. And take a look, for instance, at this slide that it made for me. So this is quite mind-boggling. So especially if you want to have highly visual slides, and NotebookLM today is clearly the leading tool to use. Yeah? And again, you can do that with one single click, with one single prompt. You give it a document and it creates for you this high-level presentation. Again, what are the advantages and disadvantages here? Yeah, so the advantages are clearly that it creates very high quality content for free. Again, this is a free tool at the moment. You don't have to pay anything. It's very strong in visualization. And especially if you want to do storytelling in your slides, it can create fantastic slides for you. Yeah. What are the disadvantages? Here, at the moment here, you cannot import your own branding style. So you saw I could not use the WAU branding style. That's not possible at the moment. In the end, you just get a PDF. Yeah, so adjusting the content later on is quite difficult at the moment. And that also means that you have limited flexibility to fine-tune the slides. So that's at the moment a bit of the limitations. Now, I'm sure that they will address that, especially in the own Google Slides environment. I think this will be definitely addressed, but that's at the moment the limitations of this tool. Yeah, but I hope that you see that today we already have a lot of options to make high quality slides with all kinds of generative AI tools. Each tool has its advantages and disadvantages. And so then you have to decide which tool is most valuable for you. Okay, then finally, a third point that I want to briefly discuss is what about selecting and implementing an AI environment in your own company? And so as you already see, today, there are a lot of tools available. You have OpenAI, you have Claude, you have Gemini, you have Gamma. So there are all these kind of tools. So how do I make a strategic decision about which tools do I want to give to my employees and how do I want to implement it? And based on my experience of the past years, I would say that if you think about building an AI environment for a company, I think you nowadays have to create 4 different environments. And the first is what I call an AI user environment. And so that's the environment where all the employees in your company are able to use AI in a safe, compliant, and reliable way. So you need to make sure that you have an infrastructure that allows every employee in your company to use AI for their day-to-day activities. A second environment that you need is what I would call an AI builder environment. So that's an environment that allows some of your employees to actually build AI applications. Yeah? And again, also here, safety, reliability, data privacy will be important. Third, I think you need to create what I would call an AI specialization environment. And this will be a limited number of tools that are very relevant for a limited number of employees, but will not be relevant for all employees. And typically here, the data security risks might be a bit higher. That also means that you want to only provide it to the people that really, really need it. And finally, I think you also need what I would call an AI experimentation environment. And this would be an environment for the nerds in your company to really experiment with the most sophisticated AI tools, but that you really want to isolate from the rest of the company to avoid contamination and all kinds of prompt injection risks and whatever. Yeah? So let me briefly explain a bit more these four environments and also show you how we at WHU have started building these environments. Yeah? So the first is a regular AI user environment. So that means you need to have an environment that is good enough for your regular employees to start using AI on a day-to-day basis. What do we have at WHU? We have ChatGPT as our user environment. So we have signed a deal with OpenAI. So we have what is called the educational license of ChatGPT. And that means that today all our students have a subscription to OpenAI, all the staff, all the faculty, and our data are stored on European servers that meet all GDPR and data security needs. Yeah? So I can upload confidential data in my ChatGPT. I don't have to be concerned about data security. It's like your Microsoft computer on an Azure server. Also, ChatGPT is actually hosted on European Azure servers. Yeah? So we have a kind of local ChatGPT on a dedicated Azure server in Europe. So that makes it a reliable solution. Of course, you don't have to use OpenAI. I think a lot of companies use the Microsoft Copilot. And I think actually today, that's also a perfectly okay solution. I would say until 6 months ago, I would say Copilot was very crappy and not really reliable. But actually in the past month, it has drastically improved. And today you can do deep research with Copilot. You can create GPTs with Copilot. You can create projects with Copilot. They have the GPT-5 model. So actually the output is very good. You can create images. So actually, I think nowadays it's a very reliable, safe solution that allows your employees to do the basic stuff that they need to be able to do with ChatGPT today. Of course, you can also use the Google environment, and I think there are now a lot of options. And so in the end, you have to make a choice. And then I would say, okay, and at least we can now give our employees one clear solution. Then you also need a builder environment, and this is the environment for employees that really want to build applications. So today, a very prominent concept is vibe coding, and that means you start coding, but not by writing code, but by giving instructions to a coding agent. And I think, especially I saw in the last weeks, a lot of fuzz about this. So more and more companies start to experiment with that. Actually, I have embedded here a video about the environments that we can use at WHU. So at WHU, we can use Microsoft Visual Studio Code as our environment. And in that environment, we can use what is called the GitHub Copilot agent for free. So all students and faculty can use that for free. You can get a free subscription. And so again, this is then a safe, reliable environment in which we can build applications at a low cost. And then we can also connect that with our OpenAI environment. So we can also use what is called the Codex agent from OpenAI with API keys that are again fully secure. So in that way, we can create a building environment for the employees at WHU that need that environment. Finally, or as a third point, You want to make sure that some of your employees can use very specialized applications that are specialized for very specific tasks. And I think, for instance, GammaApp is a first example. So GammaApp might be an application that you want to share with some of your employees that have to create a lot of slides. However, in this case, often data security, data compliance becomes a bit of an issue. So when I use GammaApp, I'm not on a fully secure GDPR consistent environment. So there I need to be careful not to upload confidential information. So a lot of these tools might have some restrictions there. For instance, another tool that I use now on a regular basis is something called Riverside. I can briefly show you what that means. And Riverside is actually a tool that I use to create YouTube videos. I now engage a lot in creating YouTube videos. That's kind of a bit an educational hobby of mine. And Riverside is actually a very specific tool, AI-driven, to help you to edit YouTube videos. So it helps you to automate a lot of the boring editing stuff by means of AI. So for instance, if I upload here a video, I can now go here I can now go here to AI tools. And for instance, this tool can automatically remove all the silences out of my video, which often normally would take me a lot of editing, that I have to edit out all the silences. Here, with one single click, all the silences are removed. And that is for me a huge time saver. So I have a subscription to this, but that's then a kind of specialized tool that I want to use for this particular activity. And so I think as a company, you have to decide for which employees do you want to use which tools. And again, there for every tool, you will have to make an assessment about, can we share confidential information with this tool? What is the governance that we need to have? And so that will require a bit more investment also in terms of governance and data security. And finally, and here it becomes much more technical. I think you also need an experimentation environment where really the nerds in your company can start exploring the newest things. For instance, today there's a lot about Claude code and all that kind of stuff. But there, typically, the security risks tends to become a bit higher. And for instance, we at WHU, at the moment, we are busy in creating a local server environment on which we can put open source large language models that are completely disconnected from the internet. So these are large language models that we can use even without using the internet. So they are extremely safe. But then typically what you need to do is much more technical. So this is definitely not for your average employee, but for the people that are really want to push the boundaries, this kind of solutions is also what you need. That's why I think as a company, if you have these 4 different environments, then I think you can give your employees the necessary tools to really start working with generative AI. And at the same time, you can manage all the data security, data compliance issues that exist nowadays. So I think in that way, you can find a good balance between giving employees the opportunities to innovate, to experiment, and at the same time make sure that no chaos happens in terms of data security, data privacy. Okay, these were the 3 things that I wanted to share today. Just briefly as kind of some advertising. So I have my own YouTube channel. So if you're not yet subscribed, please do so. There you can keep up with some new trends that I try to explain there. So if you're interested in this topic, this might be a channel to follow. And as I think quite some of you might know, we have some dedicated executive education on GenAI. So I do on a regular basis a boot camp, and that is an online boot camp. So it's 3 times 2 hours in which I try to share the newest trends in AI. So we do this boot camp like every half a year. So if you want to kind of be updated, this could be something to follow. Now the February session now is already fully booked. So I think the next session will be somewhere in June. But so then if you're interested, you could participate. We also have a 3-day program on innovation and entrepreneurship with AI. So there I do a lot about how to leverage AI for innovation and entrepreneurship, but we also have several guest speakers that talk about specific innovation and entrepreneurship topics. And finally, we also have a 2-day program focused on storytelling with AI. And in this program on Day 1, my colleague Christophe Hinert actually explains the basics of storytelling. Yeah, so how can you be a good storyteller? And then on day 2, I actually, with participants, do a number of exercises on how to leverage GenAI for storytelling. And we really believe in this program because we think storytelling is becoming one of the core skills in the age of AI. So that's why we invested in setting up this program. And actually this program, again, I think the last 2 sessions were fully booked. So if you're interested, try to go quickly to our website because these things tend to get fully booked quite. Okay, that's what I wanted to share.